Hello, in this lesson I promised I'm gonna show you a little bit more in detail what this function does. So if you remember, this is the part of our code where we call the data from our database and we send it to chart.js so that we can display our chart. So let's explain it what it does. So first we call mini-XHR with a URL from which we want to retrieve the data. Then we get the data and we have to transform it back to the JavaScript. So we run JSON parse data. If you remember, when we send data, we called JSON stringify. So now when we retrieve it back, we have to parse it, translate it. So JSON parse. Once we have the data, it looks like this. So it's an object with some random numbers. This is how Firebase stores the data. So the key is some random letters, not numbers, letters, and then the results. This is basically answers from one user. And then the next key and the answers from this second user. And then again the next key and the next results, the next answers. So we get something like this, but maybe we have like hundreds of answers, so it would continue in the same manner. Key, answers, key, answers. So this is an object that we get, and this is our data. So what we want now, we want to get all the results only, so we don't need these keys, we just want the results, so that later we can calculate the average of all these results. So how do we do that? First, we take the keys and create a new variable where we say object give us all the keys from this data object. So in JavaScript, this is a built-in function. So every time we have an object, we can just say object.keys and then name of the object, and it returns an array of strings of keys. So now we have the keys, and now we need to run keys map, and then for every key, it runs data key and it returns the answers from this key. So it runs through the first key and it returns the results. It runs through the second key and it returns results, and the third key, and it gives us the third results. So here, after this line is run, we have a new array of answers, and it looks like this. Super. So now the next step. After we have this, we run a function reduce, which basically goes through each of the answers and does this what we would otherwise do in our head. So it takes the first of every result, so 2 plus 2 plus 4 divided by 3, because we have 3, so this is the average of all the results for the first question. Then it takes 3 plus 3 plus 5 divided by 3, and we get the average of the second question. And then the same for the third question, fourth, fifth, and sixth. So the final thing what we get is the average array of average answers that looks maybe something like this. So this would be our end result. So now, because this looks a little bit complicated, I will try to explain you how approximately this works, but you don't have to worry too much. It's like a very complicated function, and you will rarely use that kind of complicated things, only if you will deal with statistics or some data analysis, but just that you get to know also this part, we try to show it in this tutorial. So let's go back to the map function and try to repeat what the map function does. So when we run a map function on a certain array, this means that the map goes through all the elements in an array and applies the transform function on it. So if we have the array of 1, 2, and 3, the map will go through each of the element x and apply a transform function x times 10 on this element. So the end result will be a new array, 10, 20, and 30 will be the values of this new array. So our new array will be this, because we mapped it and we transformed each of the element with x times 10. So this is the map. But we have another method that we can run on our array, and this is a reduce. Reduce gives us more possibilities. So if we want to make a summary of all these elements in a certain array, we cannot run a map, because map always runs through each of the elements and transforms each of the elements. But here, we don't want to transform each of the elements. We want to get a summary, just one number. So how do we do that? We call a function reduce, and inside we call a function summarize, which will have three things: a sum, an element, and an index, so the current element. So this is the index 0, this is 1, and this is a 2. So let's see how this code works. So in the first round, we check what is the current summary, because we just started, we don't have any summary. So here, after the function, we can say what are we starting with, and this is going to be our sum. So we start with a 0, so sum is a 0. Our first element is 10, and index is 0. So what we do, we run this line, so we say summary is sum plus x. Our current sum is 0, so we say 0 plus 10, and we get a new sum. So our new sum would be a 10. Then we go another round. We do the second step. We check what is the current sum. The current sum is a 10. Our current element is 20, and our index is 1, because we are on the second element. We do summary equals current summary, so 10 plus x, which is 20, and we get a new summary, which is a 30. So if we check, 10 plus 20 is 30, so everything is okay. So now we go to the third step, and we check our current summary is 30, our current element is 30, and our index is 2. So what we do? We do a new summary, so sum equals our current summary plus x, so 30 plus 30 returns 60. So our summary is 60, and this is the last returned sum. So whenever we want to calculate a summary of a certain array, this is how we do it. So we call a function reduce, and then another function summarize, where we have sum, x, and index, and we say sum equals sum plus x, return a sum, and we start with a sum 0. So this is the strategy how to get a summary. But in our case, we want to get the stats, so we want to get the average. So we take the array of all the results. This is this. We call a reduce function, and then function calculate average. And then we have average, we have x, and we have index. So we define a step, we define average, we map the average, where we run another function with average answer and the index, and then we loop through each of the answers and calculate the average and return the average. So basically what we do, we take the first element, add the second. Basically we take first element from the first array, first element from the second array, first element from the third array, and we calculate the average. Then we take the second from first array, second from second array, second from third array, and we calculate the average again. So this is the function we run so that we get the average of all the answers, and we return an array that looks like something like this, and this is basically the result of the whole process. So this is what we return to our chart.js, and we say now display this and compare it with the results of this certain user. So then we have two arrays. We have this user that responded maybe with these answers, and then we have an average answers from all the users, and we display this in a chart and make a comparison of user and compare it to average of all users. So a little bit complicated. This is really like some extra thing. You don't have to bother too much with that, but just that you know, there are some very interesting functions. Like you could also do this totally differently, like write all these steps by hand and make like 50 lines of code. But just that you know, because in statistics or something, you have to use these things a lot. So in JavaScript, you also have access to functions like reduce or map, so that you can save a lot of time and save also a lot of space in your code. So you see, only with this couple of lines, we basically create all this what I explained in the steps below. So I hope this wasn't too much. We are basically done now. All our portfolio app and the quiz app are done. So the next what is left is how to put this online, because currently we are developing everything in the require bin. So the next step that is waiting for us is to put this code on the GitHub, so that we have the saved version on GitHub, and that also other users can see it and maybe copy some things from it. So we open source it, we share it with others. And the next thing is how to take it from GitHub and put it on the internet, so online, so that we just share the URL, and anyone from our friends to our potential business partners or employers or employees or whatever can access our webpage. So see you in the next lesson, and we put our stuff online.